In this video, we're going to apply the distributive property in order to rewrite mathematical expressions. So when we begin using the distributive property, our goal is to be able to rewrite the following statement without parentheses. And some of you may remember how to do this, and that's excellent, and some of you may not. So the idea behind the distributive property is that this value out in front of the parentheses must be multiplied by both values inside of the parentheses. So first I'm going to use keep, change to prevent any errors. But in order to rewrite this without parentheses, we take the 6 and we multiply it by each number inside of the parentheses. So we have 6 times 3x and then added together with 6 times that -5. And then from here we simplify each term. 6 times 3 becomes 18 with the x, plus 6 times -5 becomes -30. And then if you'd like to write this as a subtraction answer instead, either of these two answers would be okay. But our goal throughout this particular lesson is to be able to rewrite these mathematical expressions with parentheses without them, because sometimes it's just easier to do the math without the parentheses there. The property you saw me apply on the previous slide is called the distributive property, and it comes from the word distribute, which is to give out or to share something with others. And so when you saw that 6 times 3x plus -5, we were giving out or distributing that 6 to both the 3x and the -5. The distributive property says that we can multiply a multiplier outside of the parentheses, which in this case was 6, by distributing it, this should say, to each number inside of the parentheses. So when we took that 6 and we were multiplying it by both values inside of the parenthesis, and we rewrote it as 18x minus 30, that was the act of applying the distributive property to rewrite a mathematical expression. Now I want to prove to you that the distributive property works because I have a number of students that question me on whether that's really a property that we can use. So what we're going to do first is we're going to apply the order of operations here to this statement just using numbers, so I can prove to you that the distributive property gets you to the same exact answer. So using our order of operations, we know that our parentheses come first. So here we would do 2 times, in parentheses, we would add those two together, and we get 7. And then when we do 2 times 7, we get 14. Now if we apply the distributive properties, we do 2 times 4 plus 2 times 3. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 2 times 3 is 6, and that gives us 14. So you can see we get the exact same answer. So the distributive property can be used to rewrite mathematical expressions. And while it wouldn't be super helpful with just numbers, it is extremely helpful when we have variables involved and we need to solve for those variable values. So for these 4 problems, we're going to quickly use the distributive property to rewrite the statements below. So let's start here with this first problem in part A. So we have 4 times 2x plus 4 times 10. So 4 times 2x gives us 8x, plus 4 times 10 is 40. Then if we move over here to letter B, we're going to use keep, change to help us get started. And then we'll do 8 times 6y plus 8 times -4. So we get 48y plus a -32. And again, you could just write subtract 32 instead of plus a negative if you would like. All right, from here again we use keep, change. So we do -5 times 4 plus -5 times a -2x. So we end up with -20 plus negative times a negative is 10x. And there's our final answer. And then this last one is probably the trickiest one because students get confused by this negative out in front. This negative out in front is an implied -1. So if there's no number there, they're implying that there's a 1 there. And because there's a negative in front of it, that makes that a -1. So now here, if we put in our -1 and we apply keep, change, we have -1 times 3x plus -1 times -8. So we end up with -3x plus 8 because we had a -1 times a -8. And there we go. So if you take a look at this statement, this is a much more complicated mathematical statement. You see two sets of parentheses, and ultimately we want to simplify this by using the distributive property. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the distributive property from left to right. In order to combine any terms, we need to get rid of the parentheses because we can't combine things inside the parentheses with things outside of those parentheses. So let's start by distributing this 5. So here we have 5 times x plus 5 times 4. And then here we have plus 3 times 4x plus 3 times 5. So if we simplify those out, we get 5x plus 20 plus 12x plus 15. And hopefully, in your mathematical brain, you're starting to think, well, I can identify some like terms. So I see both 5x and 12x contain the variable part of x. Those can be combined together to be 17x. And then I see that both 20 and 15 contain no variable part, making them like terms, and those can be combined together to be 35. So if we have multiple distributions in there, we just apply them from left to right, and then we can combine like terms. All right, so these are some medium level distributive property problems. Let's first go through and use keep, change to ensure that we don't make any mistakes. So I'm going to change all of them in every problem. And then from here, notice that in this first problem, we only have one distributive property. And the thing you have to remember is that you have to get rid of the parentheses first before you can combine things together. So you cannot add the 6 and the -4. You have to get rid of the parentheses first in order to combine any terms. So here we distribute, so we leave that 6 out in front, and we have 6 plus -4 times 3x plus that -4 times 2. So then we have 6 plus -12x plus -8. And now we look for like terms. We see that -12x, but it doesn't have any like terms to combine with it. But if we look at the constants, we have 6 plus -8, which add together to be -2. Then from here, we can see we have two distributive property problems down here. So this first one, we have 2 times x plus 2 times -4. And then something to note here is that by using keep, change, I was able to catch that we're distributing a -2 here. So we have -2 times 3x plus -2 times 2. So now if I simplify these a bit, I get 2x plus a -8 plus a -6x plus a -4. And I can then begin combining like terms together. So the 2x and the -6x combine together to be -4x, and then the -8 and the -4 combine together to be a -12. And finally, two problems that are a bit more complex. In part C, you'll notice that we have 3 terms being distributed and just a negative here. And then down here, you'll notice we have 3 distributions happening, so a little bit more complex. To start, let's go through and take care of keep, change to ensure that we don't make any errors. Now remember that if there's not a number here, this is an implied 1. And because it's a subtraction, it's an implied -1. So don't miss that piece. This is a common error that students typically make. They miss that -1 in there. So now let's distribute the 7. So we have 7 times 2x plus 7 times the -5 in the middle plus 7 times 4y at the end. Then we'll do plus a negative 1 times 4x plus a negative 1 times negative 5. So here we have 14x plus a negative 35 plus 28y plus a negative 4x plus negative 1 times negative 5 is 5. And now let's start combining like terms together. So I see that I have 14x and a negative 4x. Those combine together to be 10x. I then see that I have 28y but no other y's, so that 28y just stays by itself. And then finally, I have negative 35 plus 5. That turns into a negative 30. All right, in this fourth distribution problem, if we have subtractions, let's change them all to be keep, change, change. And then we go through and we distribute one at a time. So we have negative 4 times 2 plus negative 4 times negative 3y plus negative 3 times 4, the second distribution, plus negative 3 times negative 2y. Notice that using keep, change, change allowed me to catch the distribution of a negative 3. And then this last distribution is plus 2 times 4 plus 2 times 5y. So now if we go through, we have negative 8 plus negative 4 times negative 3 is 12y plus negative 12. Negative 3 times negative 2 is plus 6y plus 8 plus 10y. So we have a number of things that can be combined together. First, let's take a look at the y's. We have 12y plus 6y, so that gives us 18y plus 10 more, so we have 28y all combined together. We have negative 8 and negative 12. That brings us to negative 20. And then plus 8 more brings us to negative 12. So lots of details we need to pay attention to, but just noting, as you distribute, use keep, change, change to help you catch any sign errors, and then use your knowledge of combining like terms to get it completely simplified like we have in these two boxes.